You've been conditioned to believe that vulnerability is strength, that transparency is virtue, that giving everything of yourself makes you noble. But look around you. Where has this gotten you? You're exhausted, drained, constantly disappointed by people who take your kindness as weakness. You've built a prison of expectations, trapped yourself in the role of the giver, the fixer, the one who sacrifices. Tonight, we tear down these walls you've mistaken for shelter. The bars of this prison aren't made of steel. They're made of the lies you've been told about what it means to be good. You've been taught that self-sacrifice equals virtue, that emotional availability equals love, that constant giving equals worth. But every time you've opened your heart without reservation, every time you've trusted without boundaries, every time you've given without reciprocity, you've weakened your position in a world that mistakes kindness for stupidity. You wake up each morning feeling like you're carrying the weight of everyone else's problems. You've become the emotional dumping ground for friends who never ask about your struggles, the reliable constant for people who disappear when you need them most. You've confused being needed with being valued, and in doing so, you've trained the world to see you as a resource to be exploited rather than a person to be respected. This isn't nobility, it's self-destruction wearing a moral mask. You've been performing kindness like a trained actor, believing that if you just give enough, love enough, sacrifice enough, the world will somehow reward your goodness. But the world doesn't operate on fairness or reciprocity. The world operates on power, strategy, and the recognition of value, and you've been giving away your power for free. The most dangerous prison is the one you build with your own hands, decorated with your own virtues, locked with your own good intentions. You've created a fortress of selflessness that has become your cage. Every act of unconditional kindness is another bar. Every moment of emotional availability is another lock. Every sacrifice without expectation is another chain that binds you to a life of exhaustion and disappointment. You operate under the dangerous delusion that people mirror your intentions. You give loyalty and expect it back. You show compassion and assume it will return. You invest your energy believing others will match your commitment. This is the thinking of a child in an adult's world. Machiavelli understood what you refuse to see. Most people are driven by self-interest, not reciprocity. Your openness isn't creating bonds, it's creating opportunities for exploitation. You've been living in a fantasy where good intentions guarantee good outcomes, where treating people well ensures they'll treat you well in return. But this is magical thinking, not reality. The person who listens to your problems for hours but vanishes when you need support isn't reciprocating, they're consuming. The friend who expects your constant availability but is always busy when you need them isn't matching your energy, they're managing you. This delusion of reciprocity has made you predictable, manageable, and ultimately expendable. You've been operating from a position of emotional scarcity, believing that if you don't give everything, you'll lose everything. But the opposite is true. When you give everything, you guarantee that you'll be taken for granted. When you make yourself constantly available, you eliminate the possibility of being genuinely valued. The world isn't waiting to reciprocate your kindness. It's waiting to see how much you'll give before you wise up. Every person who has taken advantage of your good nature has done so because you've signaled that your kindness comes without conditions, without boundaries, without consequences. You've trained people to expect your emotional labor without compensation, your loyalty without effort, your presence without appreciation. You've been measuring your worth by how much you can give rather than how much you're willing to protect. This has created a cycle where your value decreases with your availability, where your importance diminishes with your accessibility. The more you give, the less you're respected. The more available you are, the less you're appreciated. This isn't an accident. It's human nature responding to the signals you've been sending. Society has sold you the greatest lie, that kindness without boundaries is virtuous. But kindness without strategy is weakness wearing a moral costume. You've been taught to suppress your natural instincts for self-preservation, to ignore the voice that whispers warnings about people's true intentions. This performative kindness has made you predictable, manageable, controllable. You've confused being liked with being respected, and in doing so, you've lost both. The voice in your head that warns you about people's motivations, you've been taught to silence it. The instinct that tells you to hold back, to wait, to observe, you've been conditioned to override it. Society has convinced you that these protective mechanisms are character flaws, that strategic thinking is selfish, that emotional boundaries are cruel. But these instincts exist for a reason. They're your psychological immune system, and you've been voluntarily suppressing them. You've been performing a version of kindness that serves everyone except you. This isn't genuine compassion. It's compulsive people-pleasing disguised as virtue. Real kindness comes from strength, not weakness. It comes from choice, not compulsion. It comes from a position of power, not from a desperate need to be accepted. But you've been giving from emptiness, loving from fear, serving from insecurity. The mask of kindness you've been wearing has become your face. You've lost touch with your authentic self beneath the layers of conditioning, beneath the expectations, beneath the performance. You've become so invested in being seen as good that you've forgotten what it means to be powerful. You've become so focused on being liked that you've abandoned the possibility of being respected. This performative kindness has made you a character in other people's stories rather than the protagonist of your own. You've been living your life in service to others' needs, others' expectations, others' comfort. But where are you in this equation? Where is your power, your agency, your authentic self? You've been so busy being what others need that you've forgotten who you are. The most tragic part is that this mask of kindness doesn't even achieve its intended purpose. People don't respect unlimited kindness. They exploit it. They don't value constant availability. They take it for granted. They don't reciprocate unconditional love. They consume it. You've been giving away your most precious resources to people who see them as entitlements rather than gifts. True power begins with the recognition that your mind is a fortress that most people should never enter. You've been leaving the gates open, allowing anyone to march through your thoughts, influence your emotions, dictate your responses. Mental untouchability isn't about isolation, it's about selective permeability. You choose who gets access to your inner world, when they get it, and how much they receive. This is the first law of inner sovereignty. Your mind is the most valuable real estate you possess, yet you've been treating it like a public park. Anyone can wander in, leave their garbage, disturb your peace, and exit without consequence. You've allowed other people's opinions to become your internal dialogue, their anxieties to become your stress, their problems to become your responsibility. This isn't empathy, it's emotional contamination. The fortress of your mind requires gates, walls, and guards, not to keep everyone out, but to control who gets in and what they're allowed to do once they're there. You need checkpoints where you evaluate whether someone's presence in your mental space serves your highest good. You need boundaries that protect your peace from those who mistake your openness for weakness. Mental untouchability means that your emotional state isn't dependent on external validation, that your self-worth isn't determined by others' opinions, that your peace isn't disturbed by those who don't deserve access to your inner world. It means you operate from a position of internal strength rather than external need. You give from abundance, not scarcity. You love from power, not desperation. This isn't about becoming cold or cruel. It's about becoming discerning and strategic. It's about recognizing that your mental and emotional energy are finite resources that must be allocated wisely. It's about understanding that not everyone deserves access to your authentic self, that some people have earned only the surface version of you, that true intimacy is a privilege to be earned, not a right to be expected. The architecture of mental fortresses requires careful construction. You need to identify your core values, your non-negotiables, your boundaries. You need to recognize the difference between people who add value to your life and those who drain it. You need to understand that saying no to others often means saying yes to yourself, that protecting your energy is not selfish, it's essential. Words are weapons you've been carelessly scattering. Every time you explain yourself, justify your actions, or reveal your reasoning, you hand over pieces of your power. Silence is not empty space, it's compressed authority. When you stop filling every moment with explanations, when you let your actions speak without commentary, you force others to project their own meanings onto your mystery. This uncertainty becomes your strength. You've been talking too much, sharing too much, explaining too much. You've been giving away your strategic advantage by revealing your thought processes, your motivations, your plans. But power operates in the shadows, in the spaces between words, in the silence that makes others uncomfortable. When you speak less, every word carries more weight. When you explain less, every action carries more mystery. The compulsion to over-explain comes from a place of insecurity, from a need to be understood, from a fear of being misinterpreted. But this need for understanding is actually a need for approval, and approval-seeking is the enemy of power. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop seeking permission for your existence. When you stop justifying your actions, you stop apologizing for your choices. Silence is a form of power that most people never learn to wield. It creates space for others to reveal themselves, to fill the void with their own assumptions, their own projections, their own insecurities. When you remain silent, you force others to show their hand while keeping yours hidden. This is strategic advantage in its purest form. The art of strategic silence isn't about being rude or dismissive. It's about being economical with your words, precise with your communication, and protective of your inner world. It's about recognizing that every word you speak is a choice. Every explanation is a decision. Every justification is a surrender of power. When you speak, make it count. When you're silent, make it meaningful. Your constant availability has made you invisible. You've confused being needed with being valued, presence with importance. Machiavelli knew that absence sharpens appreciation, while presence breeds contempt. When you make yourself scarce, you force others to confront the space you occupy in their lives. Your absence becomes a statement of your worth, a negotiation of your value. This isn't manipulation, it's reclamation of your inherent power. The psychology of scarcity applies to human relationships just as it does to economics. When something is always available, it loses its value. When someone is always present, they lose their importance. You've been giving away your presence so freely that it's become worthless in the eyes of others. They expect your availability because you've never made it conditional, never made it precious, never made it earned. Think about the people who have the most influence in your life. Are they the ones who are always available, or the ones whose time and attention feel valuable because they're selective with it? Are they the ones who text you constantly, or the ones whose messages carry weight because they're rare? The answer reveals the power of strategic absence. When you withdraw your constant availability, you create a vacuum that forces others to recognize your value. They begin to miss what they took for granted, to appreciate what they assumed would always be there, to pursue what they previously ignored. This isn't game playing, it's human psychology in its rawest form. The art of calculated absence requires discipline and strategy. You must learn to resist the urge to always be available, to always respond immediately, to always be the one who reaches out first. You must create space in your relationships, mystery in your interactions, value in your presence. This doesn't mean disappearing completely. It means being intentional about when and how you show up. Your absence should feel like a statement, not a punishment. It should communicate value, not vindictiveness. It should create curiosity, not confusion. When you master the art of strategic absence, you reclaim your power in relationships. You stop being taken for granted and start being genuinely valued. You've been drowning in other people's emotions, absorbing their anxieties, carrying their burdens, feeling responsible for their feelings. This emotional porosity has left you exhausted and ineffective. True strength comes from emotional detachment, not the absence of feeling, but the presence of choice in how you respond. You can observe without absorbing, care without carrying, love without losing yourself in the process. The difference between empathy and emotional contamination is boundaries. Empathy allows you to understand others' feelings without taking them on as your own. Emotional contamination forces you to carry others' emotions as if they were your responsibility. You've been confusing the two, thinking that taking on others' pain somehow helps them, when in reality it only weakens your ability to be genuinely supportive. Emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care strategically. You care from a position of strength rather than weakness, from choice rather than compulsion, from power rather than need. You recognize that you can't fix everyone, save everyone, or heal everyone. Your responsibility is to yourself first, others second. This detachment allows you to be more effective in your relationships, not less. When you're not drowning in others' emotions, you can see situations clearly. When you're not carrying others' burdens, you can offer genuine support. When you're not responsible for others' feelings, you can focus on your own growth and healing. The practice of emotional detachment requires constant vigilance. You must learn to recognize when you're taking on emotions that don't belong to you, when you're feeling responsible for outcomes beyond your control, when you're sacrificing your peace for others' comfort. You must develop the ability to step back, observe, and choose your level of involvement based on wisdom rather than emotion. Emotional detachment is not cruelty, it's clarity. It's not indifference, it's intelligence. It's not abandonment, it's authentic love expressed from a position of strength rather than weakness. When you master emotional detachment, you become unshakable in your core while remaining compassionate in your expression. Predictability is the enemy of power. When people can anticipate your reactions, manipulate your responses, or take your behavior for granted, you've become a tool in their hands rather than a force to be reckoned with. Unpredictability isn't chaos, it's controlled variation. You maintain your core principles while varying your expression of them. This keeps others alert, engaged, and respectful of your autonomy. You've been operating from a limited playbook, responding to situations in predictable ways, reacting to provocations with consistent patterns. This has made you manageable, controllable, and ultimately powerless. People know exactly how to push your buttons because you've shown them repeatedly. They know exactly what to expect because you've never deviated from your script. The power of unpredictability lies in its ability to keep others guessing, to prevent them from taking you for granted, to maintain their attention and respect. When people can't predict your responses, they can't manipulate your reactions. When they can't anticipate your behavior, they can't use it against you. This uncertainty becomes your strategic advantage. Unpredictability doesn't mean being erratic or unstable. It means being strategically variable. You maintain your core values and principles while varying how you express them. You keep your standards high while changing your methods. You remain authentic while becoming less transparent about your processes. The art of controlled unpredictability requires self-awareness and strategic thinking. You must understand your patterns well enough to break them, recognize your habits well enough to modify them, and know your tendencies well enough to transcend them. This isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming a more complex, interesting, and powerful version of yourself. You've been giving respect freely, treating it as a human right rather than an earned privilege. This has devalued your own worth and made others complacent in their treatment of you. Respect must be earned through consistent demonstration of value, strength, and consequence. When you make respect conditional on behavior, you create accountability. When you withdraw respect from those who abuse it, you establish boundaries that protect your dignity. The mistake you've been making is treating respect as a baseline rather than a currency. You've been giving it away without requiring anything in return, without establishing any conditions, without creating any consequences for its violation. This has trained people to expect your respect regardless of their behavior, to assume your regard regardless of their actions. Respect is not a human right, it's a human responsibility. People must earn your respect through their actions, maintain it through their behavior, and re-earn it when they've lost it. When you make respect conditional, you create incentives for better behavior. When you withdraw respect from those who abuse it, you establish consequences that protect your dignity. The protocol for earned respect is simple but requires consistency. You observe actions, not words. You judge consistency, not promises. You evaluate character, not charisma. You respect those who demonstrate respect for you, for themselves, and for the principles you value. You withdraw respect from those who violate these standards regardless of their excuses, explanations, or apologies. This isn't about being harsh or unforgiving. It's about being realistic and protective. It's about recognizing that respect is a two-way street, that dignity must be mutual, that your regard is valuable and should be treated as such. When you implement the earned respect protocol, you automatically attract people who value respect and repel those who don't. The power of conditional respect lies in its ability to create accountability in your relationships. When people know that your respect must be earned and can be lost, they treat you differently. They consider their actions more carefully, speak to you more thoughtfully, and approach you with greater consideration. This isn't manipulation. It's natural human psychology responding to clear boundaries. Most people reveal their true nature not through their words, but through their actions when they think no one is watching, when they believe there are no consequences, when they assume your kindness guarantees your forgiveness. You've been ignoring these revelations, making excuses for behavior that clearly demonstrates character. Learning to see people as they truly are, not as you hope they could be, is the foundation of psychological protection. The mirror of true intentions reflects not what people say, but what they do, not their promises, but their patterns, not their explanations, but their actions. You've been looking at the wrong mirror, listening to words instead of watching behavior, believing potential instead of accepting reality. This selective blindness has made you vulnerable to those who excel at saying the right things while doing the wrong ones. People show you who they are through their actions when they think you're not paying attention, when they believe there are no consequences, when they assume your forgiveness is guaranteed. The person who is kind to you but cruel to servers is not kind. They're strategic. The person who supports you in public but undermines you in private is not supportive. They're manipulative. The most revealing moments are not the ones where people are trying to impress you, but the ones where they think you won't notice. How do they treat those who can't benefit them? How do they behave when they think no one is watching? How do they respond when they believe their actions have no consequences? These moments reveal character more accurately than any conversation ever could. You've been making excuses for people's behavior, creating elaborate explanations for their actions, giving them credit for intentions they never had. This charitable interpretation of others' behavior has made you blind to their true nature, vulnerable to their manipulation, and disappointed by their inevitable betrayal. The most dangerous people are often those who are skilled at manipulating your compassion. The practice of seeing people clearly requires emotional detachment from your hopes and fears about who they might be. You must learn to observe without judgment, to assess without attachment, to evaluate without emotional investment. This isn't about becoming cynical, it's about becoming realistic. It's about protecting yourself from those who would exploit your good nature. The person you were, open, trusting, constantly available, served a purpose in your evolution. But that version of you is now obsolete. The transformation from emotional accessibility to mental untouchability isn't about becoming cold or cruel. It's about becoming discerning, strategic, and protective of your most valuable resource, your mental and emotional energy. This is your metamorphosis from victim to sovereign. Every version of yourself has served a purpose in your journey. The open, trusting, giving person, you were helped. You learn about human nature, about relationships, about the cost of unconditional kindness. But that person has taught you everything they could teach you. That person has given you everything they could give you. That person has loved as deeply as they could love. Now it's time to evolve. The transformation you're undergoing is not a rejection of your past self. It's an evolution beyond it. You're not becoming someone new. You're becoming someone more complete, more strategic, more powerful. You're keeping the best parts of who you were while discarding the parts that made you vulnerable, exploitable, and exhausted. This metamorphosis requires you to grieve the person you were while embracing the person you're becoming. You must mourn the innocence you're losing while celebrating the wisdom you're gaining. You must let go of the naivety that kept you safe while accepting the responsibility that comes with power. The transformation from victim to sovereign is not a destination. It's a practice. Every day, you choose how to respond to others' behavior. Every interaction is an opportunity to exercise your new understanding, to implement your new boundaries, to express your new power. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming intentional. The sovereign version of yourself doesn't operate from fear or scarcity. They operate from strength and abundance. They don't give to get. They give from choice. They don't love from need. They love from power. They don't serve from compulsion. They serve from decision. This is the person you're becoming, one conscious choice at a time. You now understand that mental untouchability isn't a destination. It's a practice. Every day, you choose who gets access to your thoughts, who earns your emotional investment, who deserves your authentic self. You've learned to operate from a position of abundance rather than scarcity, strength rather than fear. You give from choice, not compulsion. You love from power, not desperation. This is what it means to be mentally untouchable, not unreachable, but unreachable without earning the privilege. The untouchable identity is not a mask you wear, it's the person you've always been beneath the conditioning, beneath the expectations, beneath the performance. It's your authentic self protected by wisdom, strengthened by experience, and empowered by choice. This identity doesn't reject connection. It demands quality in connection. It doesn't avoid love. It requires respect in love. Mental untouchability means that your peace is not dependent on others' behavior, that your worth is not determined by others' opinions, that your happiness is not contingent on others' approval. You operate from an internal source of strength that cannot be diminished by external circumstances. This doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care strategically. The practice of mental untouchability requires daily commitment to your own sovereignty. You must consistently choose your responses rather than react from habit. You must regularly evaluate your relationships and adjust your boundaries accordingly. You must continually protect your energy from those who would drain it without providing value in return. This identity attracts different people into your life, those who recognize and respect power, those who value what is difficult to obtain, those who understand that true intimacy must be earned. It repels those who seek easy targets, those who mistake kindness for weakness, those who confuse availability with value. The untouchable identity is not about isolation. It's about integration. You integrate your power with your compassion, your strength with your love, your boundaries with your openness. You become someone who can be deeply intimate with those who earn it while remaining completely protected from those who don't. This is the ultimate expression of psychological sovereignty, being fully yourself while being completely safe.